Guys, what's up? It took me a little longer than what I expected to get some of this information to you. Today, I'm going to talk about some of the uranium mining and the problems that are still occurring in the Navajo reservation and up in the Four Corners region. Took me a little bit because I was trying to find the most up-to-date information that I could find. There's not a whole lot of like new research within the last like 10 years because it's kind of started to taper off as far as how much studying is being done for it. There's absolutely a ton of advocacy, especially from the Navajo tribe, that is still going on to try and get some reparations for what the uranium mining has done to the Navajo people since the 1940s. So we'll jump right into this. So before 1948. Most of the uranium that was being mined was in Germany and Czechoslovakia. Um, the uranium that was coming into the U.S., we were obviously buying from them. It wasn't until 1948 when the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission guaranteed a price and purchase for all uranium that was mined in the U.S. Now, as early as 1879, there was starting to be a connection between mining uranium and lung cancer. So that's something to remember. As early as 1879, there was speculation and a good correlation between mining activities and especially uranium and lung cancer. Okay, so in 1948, U.S. Starts guaranteeing that they will purchase at a specific price all uranium that was mined in the U.S. So that created a huge mining boom in the Colorado Plateau, which is the Four Corners region, meaning New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, uh, uh, and Arizona. Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona. Yeah. So that's the Four Corners region. That's the Colorado Plateau. And so that region is the most uh, has the most uranium available for mining pretty much in the world. So there was a again just a boom of mines that came into that area. That area is also uh, largely part of the Navajo reservation. So again, another thing to keep in mind. So by 19 up until 1971, the U.S. was the sole proprietor or the sole purchaser of all uranium. So from 1948 to 1971, all uranium was being mined for the nuclear testing and nuclear bombs that the U.S. was in development of. So what we'll talk about at another time is all the bombing and the testing that was done in that area to test these nuclear weapons during the Cold War. But again, up until 1971, the U.S. was the sole purchaser of the uranium that was being mined. Now, the uranium was being mined by private companies, but the U.S. was basically contracting these companies to produce uranium for the U.S. government to use. Okay, so by 1958, it was estimated that there was about 7,500 reports of uranium with over 7 million tons of ore. So again, huge boom. And the estimate is that by that time there was probably about 750 mines in that area. Um, Now, when Talina and I went to Arizona to go to Sedona, we stopped in Grants, New Mexico, which is kind of how this all kind of ties in. We stopped there to for overnight, and what we found by happen chance is that we came across the New Mexico Mining Museum, and it was specifically mainly on uranium. And we'd been talking about uranium for a while. And so it was like, hey, look, babe, there's a museum on uranium mining. And so we went in and we did the tour. It's the only museum in the world that has kind of a mock mine that you can go down into and get kind of get a feel for how that that atmosphere was. Um, so the main areas that were pointed out in this museum were in Cove, Arizona, Shiprock, New Mexico, Monument Valley in Utah, the Church Rock in New Mexico, and Kayenta, Arizona. So that's the main areas where most of the mines were concentrated. Okay. So again, I said a lot of the Navajo reservation is amongst this area where all the mines were located. So naturally, the Navajo men would work in these mines because they were close to home, and this was really the first opportunity that the Navajo had to tie into the economic possibilities in the U.S. And so they were able to start, making money. What what they didn't know and didn't understand, Navajo doesn't have a word for radiation. So between not having language for what dangers may be there, they also didn't speak a whole lot of English, and they lacked the education. And so, what you ended up having were workers who didn't understand or couldn't comprehend the danger that they were putting themselves in for working in these mines or even living close to these mines. And so they have reports of workers just saying they weren't told about the hazards of working in a uranium mine, even though they knew that there were health hazards. The government and these mining companies knew that there were health hazards with working in a uranium mine. They didn't tell the workers about this, or tell the workers in a way, the Navajo workers, in a way that they could understand and comprehend the danger that they were putting themselves in. So 1948 is when the U.S. started doing their own, mining, right? So in the 1950s, the U.S. Public Health Services began a study in the Colorado Plateau of the miners, and this was to see, to just kind of verify, to see how strong the connection was between the mining activities and the and lung cancer. Okay. um, so the Atomic Energy Commission chose not to require ventilation for the uranium mines. So what the study from the U.S. Health Public Health Services suggested from their research was that these mines needed better ventilation in order to mitigate the amount of lung cancer, or the amount of radioactive dust and particles that these miners were being exposed to. They needed better ventilation, but the AEC chose not to require the ventilation that would mitigate the health hazards of working in these uranium mines. And the AEC actually squelched any public knowledge about the findings of the correlation between um, the mining activities and lung cancer, and that providing proper ventilation could mitigate that risk. So they were keeping it under wraps, right? They actually went as far as to forbid the scientists that were working um, on these studies. They prevented them from speaking about it, and so they completely put it under wraps. Didn't want it out into the public for them to know, and that's because putting the ventilation into the uranium mines would have been too expensive. And again, there's a connection of they were using a population primarily for their employment of the Navajo people. Um, and when it comes to employing minorities, the U.S. has a long history of not caring about their working conditions and keeping things under wraps to be able to maximize profit. Okay. And so, again, purely a financial risk, financial expense to put in proper ventilation to save these workers. And so it wasn't until the 1960s, after 10 years of mining, that the first cases of lung cancer began to show up. So um, it still took nearly 20 years after the need was clear for the federal regulations um, to mandate ventilation. Okay, so it came down to 20 years, of mining before the government said that there had to be ventilation. Okay, and it was only after it so many people were getting sick and being diagnosed with lung cancer that they couldn't ignore it anymore. Okay, um, so going kind of moving into what is going on now and kind of what is being seen now. um, the According to the Southwest Research and Information Center, there's still over 520 mines that are not cleaned up, abandoned mines that are not cleaned up. And what that means is that the waste, what's called tailings, is still exposed, and so it hasn't been cleaned up properly in a way to keep the radiation at a as minimal as possible. They were just abandoned, and these waste products and building material and everything was just left there. Okay, these areas have actually shown to be have 10 times the background radiation level. Now, background radiation is the amount of radiation that naturally occurs. So obviously there are elements in our environment, in the earth, that naturally have radioactive properties. The background level is that naturally occurring level. And so that's what we mean when I say when we talk about background levels. So these mines that haven't been cleaned up, um, about half of them are showing 10 times that background level of radiation. In 1979, at Church Rock, which was in um, New Mexico. Um, Church Rock had the largest accidental release of radioactive material in U.S. history. And what happened with this is that a tailings dam, remember, that's waste from mining uranium, which is radioactive waste. Um, so this dam burst, and it had radioactive water basically in it. And it sent 1,100 tons of radioactive mill waste and 90 million gallons of contaminated liquid into the Rio Puerco River, which headed towards Arizona. To this day, so 1979, to this day, the Navajo people still cannot use that water. Why is that important? Because there's not a lot of water access in that area. There's not, it's basically desert. And so one of the primary ways that they were getting water during that time was through this river. This water is still contaminated to this day, and they still cannot use the water there. Okay, 1979. We're in 2023. Okay, um, so the issues that they're still facing, obviously, a lot of the homes that are in that area. Again, you're thinking Navajo reservation, so there's a lot of cultural reverence that still happens. A lot of people still live in the same type of dwellings that their ancestors lived in. And so a lot of the homes were built from abandoned mining materials, um, which they have found to have 50 times, 50 times the level of safe background radiation. And these people are living in these homes day in and day out, being exposed to 50 times the background radiation. And they had no idea when they built these homes that in using the sand and the leftover materials that were left by these abandoned mines, they had no clue that that these materials and that the earth that they were using was contaminated. And so for generations, they've been living in these dwellings with at this time. Back then, probably even more radiation. But as of current day, 20 or 50 times the amount of background radiation. Um, so the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, started to do a survey on these homes between 2008 and 2023. They have only surveyed 1,000 homes. Okay, between 2008 and 2023, surveyed 1,000 homes. They have removed contamination from 60 resident yards and have removed 47 structures. Okay. So in what, 15 years, that's the amount of work that the EPA has done in order to try and make these dwellings in this area safe for the people of the Navajo Nation on the Navajo reservation, uh, make these dwellings safe. Uh, to me, that is just unacceptable. Uh, because again, when we drove through a lot of this area when we were coming back from Sedona. Um, there's not a lot of there's not money. There's extensive poverty, and people live in whatever they can. And so again, a lot of these homes are built the same way that their ancestors built, with the sand and water and mud and making clay homes. And they have dirt floors. And so these people are breathing it in. They're being exposed to it through their skin, day in, day out, and all from the US government needing to mine uranium for nuclear weapons, for atomic weapons. And it's only now starting to be some remediation or reparations for that community, but it's still not going far enough, not nearly. Okay, um, so kind of getting into what uranium is. Okay, um, uranium is a chemical element. Okay, uranium, which is naturally occurring. Um, what radium decays into when it is radium. So uranium decays into radium, and that radium decays and releases into a radioactive gas called radon. Okay, um, radon has the in the mines has greater radiation than uranium. So as uranium decays, it becomes more radioactive. Okay, um, so the what happens is there's called a half life. So that's how long it takes for the radioactivity to be cut down by half. Okay, um, for uranium to not be radioactive anymore, it takes 4.4 billion years. 4.4 billion years for radioactive uranium decay. So, radium and radon. 4.4 billion years for it not to be radioactive anymore. Okay. Um, so, kind of give you an idea, uranium itself, which is in the Earth's crust or the soil of the Earth, 40% of the heat of the Earth, 40% is from radioactive uh, uranium. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea, one, of how much heat comes off of the reactivity of the iridium, but it also gives you an idea of how uh, how long this element persists in the environment. Okay, so keep in mind 4.4 billion years for uranium to no longer be radioactive, and people are living in homes that were built from the leftover waste, so the tailings, the the decayed properties of uranium mining. They're living in these homes. Okay, make that connection. All right. Um, so and again, another way to kind of give you an idea is a lot of people are familiar with Chernobyl. Okay. Um, do so Chernobyl had uranium in it, right? It was a nuclear power plant. It'll take 20,000 years from the time of that blast for that for Chernobyl to be able to be inhabitable again. Okay, if I remember right, I feel like I came across a documentary saying that there were people that were still living very close, but it's not a safe environment. Okay, there's the people that if I'm remembering right, people that are living there understand that there's this radiation, but it's their home. Um, but again, 20,000 years before that area is actually safe be uh, to be living in. Um, so, what is uranium? You know, biologically, what does uranium do to the human body? What diseases, what issues come from it? Okay, so like we say, lung cancer is by far the the worst and the deadliest, right? It's the most severe disease that is associated with uranium mining. Uh, Pneumococcus, other non-cancerous respiratory diseases, kidney failure. thyroid disease, uh, and a thing called Navajo neuropathy. Um, Now, I'll come back to that in a minute. Um, what the CDC found um as far back as 2016 is that they were finding uranium levels in newborn babies. Okay, so what that means is that uranium is either being passed down through the mom through the genes, or the uranium is being passed through the passed on through the environment from the mom to the baby. Okay, but babies are already being born with uranium levels too high uranium levels. We have naturally occurring uranium in our system because, again, part of the environment. But their newborn babies are being found to have uranium levels that are too high. Okay. Um, so they also found that 20%, 27% of the residents of the Navajo reservation have high levels of uranium in their urine, compared to only 5% of the U.S. population. So, um, so 5% of the U.S. population will test having high uranium in their urine. 27% of the residents of the Navajo reservation are test having high levels of uranium in their urine. So pretty big, pretty big difference there. Um, so when they've been looking at the uranium levels in newborn babies, they follow the babies through the first year, and those levels stay at that increased, or that higher level. Um, and what that is showing is, when with these kids that test at a higher uranium level in their system, they have slower development. So it's causing developmental delays, and they are starting to see an increase in autism uh, diagnoses. So again, there's a link to autism, uranium mining, and Talina is doing a lot of her research, as she just put up a video about the autistic person. Okay, but there is a correlation between the high level of uranium in the people of the Navajo reservation, and the increase in the diagnoses of autism. Okay, talking about that Navajo neuropathy. Now, this is obviously specific to the Navajo Nation or Navajo people. So this is mainly affects kids. Not to say that older people don't have this, but it's mainly diagnosed in kids. So Navajo neuropathy is a mitochondrial DNA depletion disease. Okay, um, so it damages the DNA. What this is, the symptoms of this is severe progressive sensory motor neuropathy. It's associated with corneal ulcers, scarring, and anesthesia. Which corneal anesthesia is the loss of feeling, a numb cornea. Um, Acral mutilation, which is the loss of pain sensation in the distal extremity, so loss of feel. And then metabolic and immunologic uh, uh, derangement. So that's different metabolical and different metabolic diseases and uh, uh, immuno diseases. Uh, and then hepatop- hepatopathy. Not great with medical terms, but that's an abnormal or diseased liver. Okay, and again, this is mainly in children. This is directly connected to uranium exposure. Um, it is a um, uh, it is a phenomenon, I guess, that you could call it, specific to Navajo, the Navajo tribe, or the Navajo people, and the uranium exposure that they have. Okay, uh, so that kind of gives you an idea uh, of of the severity of the uranium that is still exposed, not cleaned up from the uranium boom. Primarily, the U.S. government was responsible for, and these mines not being cleaned up. It is they're very well aware of the exposure. The government is very well aware of the health issues that are associated with the mines and the tailings that are still there. Um, so it's not just the people that worked in the mines or lived close to the mines. There's also downwinders, meaning people that were downwind of these mines that weren't necessarily in the location. There is a reparation act that the government started to pay people who were able to properly, document or provide evidence that they worked in the mill or that they were a driver that transported the materials, that they were in the area during a certain time, but it was only during the times that the U.S. government was using the mines. Okay, so up until from 48 to 71, anybody after that cannot qualify for these reparation payments. I read a story of one one lady that her father needed a lung transplant because of cancer. He was a miner in the uranium mines. He needed a lung transplant. It was going to be about $300,000 to have this surgery. He qualified for the reparations payout. The payout was $100,000. Not nearly enough to be able to cover the the medical expenses that these people are experiencing, and it's sickening. This is only just kind of scratching the surface of the disservice and distrust and um, just downright wrongdoing of the people who this land belongs to, is what it boils down to. Uh, the U.S. government, has turned a blind eye to any sort of uh, really accountability until recently, and the reparations is honestly just kind of throwing a bone. It's not nearly what they deserve or what they should be receiving. Um, and when we were driving through the reservation, and seeing these, how they were living firsthand, and seeing the lack of facilities, the lack of um, anything. It's a desert. People were living in whatever they could, whether it was, an RV that was barely being held together, um, things that were made out of, like I said, the adobe type dwelling, made out of, sand, dirt, clay. Um, they don't have the services, and obviously they don't have the representation. Um, and the a lot of there's a lot of, incentive for the Navajo councils and to try and bring in money so that there's at least, you know some sort of financial uh, flow that is coming in. And so a lot of times, you know, there's a conflict of what is best. Are they going to bring in? There's talk of starting uranium mining up again. There's a lot of Navajo people that are in favor of it because it's going to bring in money. It's going to bring in jobs. It's going to bring in, there's a financial benefit. But there's a lot of people, that are also saying, no, we don't want that. Look at what it's done to our people. But, you know, money's just being thrown like, hey, it's jobs. But we're not going to do anything to help make things better. We're not going to do anything to mitigate any of the damages. So it's really, again, taking advantage of a population that has been crapped on for decades, for generations, and it's it's sickening. We'll be talking, more about a lot of this type of stuff. Um, like I said, I still haven't gotten into all the bombings, the test bombing that happened, nuclear test that happened in that area. This is just simply getting the material mined for the atomic weapons. Um, we'll talk about the the actual testing in another video. Um, but again, I'm not a public speaker. Um, like my wife has said, I'm on the spectrum. So a lot of times I get caught up in my words. The right word doesn't come, to mind. But I hope I'm able to give you guys a little bit of education and awareness of some of the other things that HHS is looking into and researching, and certainly the disservice and disregard that has happened with the people who, this land belongs to, and was taken away from them. Those are the type of things that we seek to expose and to advocate for, and get the information out to people who may not otherwise know. We didn't know. But once you start digging, you start going down different rabbit holes, and you start getting pretty disgusted by what our country has done to a lot of people. Um, and it doesn't make you proud to be an American. Just honesty, because it's disgusting. Um, and any person with a little bit of compassion, a little bit of empathy would be like, yeah, they these people deserve more because they were done wrong. So if you've watched up till now, thank you so much for watching and supporting. Um, again, if you guys can subscribe, again, does not cost anything. Um, watch the videos through. If you don't have time to watch the whole thing, at least let it play through so that Talina gets the time, so that she's able to build up her time, and her views for, being able to start generating some income from YouTube. That would help a lot. But more than anything, continue to send good vibes, good energy, towards Talina, as she is starting to prepare for uh, another excursion. Um, and so the best way to keep up with that, and to be in the most up to date videos and information is through the YouTube channel and her Facebook. All right, so I'm gonna hop off here for now, guys. Thank you so much for paying attention, for listening, for caring, and we'll see you next time. Bye.